Hello, everybody, and welcome to Misplaced Mini, a bite-sized chunk of our misplaced musings. This is Shannon, along with my co-host.
Brian Cowan. Bite-sized, huh?
Yeah, bite-sized. The idea is to have small, focused episodes where we just have a topic that we go into, where we don't have the music or multiple topics involved. And today's topic are, video game firsts.
Would it be
Our
R or is?
I don't know if it's R or is because there's an S, firsts. So that always like, is it
Yeah, I
the episode probably is
grammarly.
our video game first, as you stated. I'm not an English major, however, so I apologize. The the topics are just going to kind of be a bunch of our different firsts that we've had. Might as well start off with our first ever gaming memories at all. So, Brian, why don't you take us away?
Well, it was pretty early. I the first one I remember because there's photographic evidence that I played games before this, but I don't remember it. So the first one I remember was my third Christmas. My mother got an NES and a handful of games for me from a pawn shop, and I remember being brought into the living room and it was set up, and The Legend of Zelda, the first one, was in the system and turned on, and I hit start to go to the save file screen, and my mother had filled in the three save slots with from Santa and Claus. So, it said from Santa Claus, and I was 3, so I 100% believed that Santa Claus had left me an NES connected to my television, and I was the happiest kid in the world.
That is awesome. That when
Just
you were
FYI,
telling
that
me,
also means that The Legend of Zelda was my first video game I ever remember playing, which is one of the reasons that, like, obviously Zelda is not an underrated or underloved series, but it has a very special place in my heart because it was my very first game.
yeah, that makes sense. And also, when you first were telling me about that story beforehand, it's so sweet. It's just very nice. I like it a lot compared to mine, which was just I got the system and it had Mario in it. Now I did sit down and play with my mother, and that was fun. And I sat in her lap and played the game, and it was in I think it was in the apartment in Gaeta in Italy, and it was a nice large CRT. I sat down, played Mario. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, but I mean, you had an American Super Nintendo in Europe, though, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, absolutely. I did have that because my father went to the commissary and picked stuff up.
So you didn't have to deal with 50 hertz nonsense like the rest of Italy did, I assume.
No, no. I mean, I think we also had a European television.
Oh yeah, I don't even know
So
how that works. Like,
yeah, we had all kinds of stuff going on. So I don't remember a lot because I was a child. One of the things I do remember is for television, we had this box and you had to have a card. You paid for the card. And the card got you access to international TV stations. So I watched a lot of older stuff because all the TV stations were older. So I grew up watching 80s and 70s action cartoons instead of the stuff that was on
huh, that,
in
that's
in the
pretty cool.
early mid 90s. Yeah, that's why I
I've
love Centaurians.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen stuff like that in old hotels, and I know old cable set top boxes had like little credit card things in the front that were like the activation card. It was the future. It was the future.
It was the future. No, it was a lot of fun, but that was my first gaming memory. So I also wanted to touch on what's the first RPG that you remember playing?
So it was Xanadu, or as some people would call it, Faxanadu, which was for the NES. It was one of the games I got with my NES. It's a bit more of an action RPG than just a straight up RPG. It's a side scrolling RPG, kind of like Zelda 2.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I was 3. I'll bring that back up. So if anybody's ever played that game, it's not easy. I I played through the first level, like not even the first. It's not even a level. I remember like getting to a wall that you needed something called a matlock to get through. I think it was a matlock. It
Ah,
was a hammer or a pickaxe of some
it
kind.
was a pickaxe if it was called
Yeah,
a matlock. Yeah.
and I didn't understand what that was or where to get it, and it took me like 3 years to progress past that point in that game. And there was an enemy right before that that's like this eyeball, like this thing with one eye and one leg that like jumps at you, and I remember that kind of creeped me out. But uh,
Yeah, it's
but
Matic
that
is funny because Matic is the original term for pickaxe, and I think a
Matic,
lot of
okay,
Japanese games used Matic when they first translated and brought them over in the 90s.
so Matic, not Matlock, not like the lawyer. Okay,
Correct.
um, I don't remember if my mom read me that word or if I feel like I could not read Matlock or that word when I was 3, but I don't know.
Mm.
So yeah, that was, and I mean, I had Final Fantasy later on, the first one. I didn't really get to the point where I could progress all the way through an RPG until Super Nintendo days, though, playing things like Final Fantasy 3 and or 6 and Earthbound and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, what about you? What was your first RPG, and what was the first one you beat or actually played enough of to matter?
So my first ever RPG was Dragon Warrior, but Dragon Quest, and I played it. Well, played. I sat on my parents' lap while they played, and they read it to me, which I thought was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. But the first RPG I ever beat was actually Saga, or as I knew it, Final Fantasy Legend for the Game Boy, and that
I
was
was
my
just
first. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in our draft recording, I also forgot to bring that one up. We, but yeah, that was actually the first mobile or handheld RPG I ever played, and it was also the first RPG I beat. So we actually have that in common.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that helps determine why we're so forgiving of a lot of things. Because while I love it to pieces, Final Fantasy Legend is not something that tells you how to beat it ever at all. You have to just wander around and figure out the NPC that you need to talk to, even if that NPC is on the opposite end of the map and requires you to run in 5 circles to get to, just to run 5 circles back, and then to run 5 circles back to that NPC again so you can find a fucking seed. The second world's not my favorite. And
That's the one that's in a tower, right? Or
yeah,
has the tower.
Final Fantasy Legend takes place all in the tower where you go up top to meet God.
And you built your party right out of like 4 characters.
Yeah, so you had your main character that you picked out at the start, and then you had the guild. And you could choose either a human. Human stats were entirely based on items that you bought, so they started off weak, but by end game you could turn them into monsters. A mutant, who is more traditional, well, as traditional as that creator gets. They level up, quote unquote, but there's like a hidden meter that doesn't tell you anything, and the spells they get are on an RNG table. So their stats and spells that they can get are randomized. And then you have monsters, which change based on eating other monsters' meat as you progress through the game.
See, that's what I remember. I didn't know what I was doing when I played it the first
Mhm.
time, and I remember I like my memory of it is that I had a party of monsters and that I was just feeding them random things and turning them into things and didn't know what I was doing because I was a child and
Same.
but was having fun with it.
Yeah, it is very fun. And fun fact, you can instant kill the boss with the chainsaw ability, which is really fun because this was back before RPGs decided not to let you have fun and kept you from using status effects on bosses.
Those were the days. Hey, at least up till the PS2 era, some still let you do that. I don't know if it went past that at all.
Well, I remember like the Super Nintendo ones didn't let you, and that
Yeah,
upset me.
it was hit or miss. I just know that in Final Fantasy X, there's an undead boss that a Phoenix down will freaking kill them, and they're a boss, and I was actually surprised.
FF8 has that too.
All games should have that.
I love stuff like that. They shouldn't do it on the final boss like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest did.
Hey, that game is supposed to be easy though. It's
True.
not to be
Ooh.
confused, by the way, with Mystic Quest, the European game. I just found this out yesterday, is why I bring
Mhm.
it up. Seiken Densetsu for the Game Boy is called Mystic Quest in Europe.
Right, and it's over here. It was called Final Fantasy Adventure.
All right, so they just confuse the hell out of everybody.
Yeah, the '90s were a time. I have another first for you. What is the first video game you ever felt like you had to defend on the internet?
Oh, on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, I I was kind of a latecomer to the internet. You know, I didn't really start getting engaged on the internet until like 1999
Mhm.
ish, and I stayed in a lot of like in groups or like fandom little message boards. So
Mhm.
uh I didn't it didn't come up a lot, but I do remember having to defend. I got a Dreamcast at launch, and it's not a game, but I had to defend the freaking Dreamcast from like PS2 and GameCube people
Mm.
constantly. You know, they're just like, "Boo!" You know, Sega sucks. You suck. PlayStation's gonna
Horses.
kill the Dreamcast.
It did.
I mean, yeah, it murdered it, but you know, back then a lot of the it was different, right? Because it wasn't like today where something would get a bad Metacritic score and I would have to defend it, right? It was more baseless. Like people would attack things. Like I remember having to defend Soul Calibur as being, you know, whenever it first came out, I was trying to tell my friends, you know, oh man, I'm playing Soul Calibur. This is like better than any like it's better than Tekken. It's better than
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, you know. And they were just like, whatever, like you stupid. That game's like, you know, those are the best fighting games. You're wrong. You know, it was stuff like that. It was just baseless
Oh
stuff.
yeah, but mine is the same way. So actually, the reason I thought of this question is it was FF Mystic Quest. So I don't think difficulty is important in how good a video game is. A lot of people do, and I know that this means I'm weird. But all I care about is the experience that I'm having is enjoyable in some way, shape, or form, and difficulty has very little to do with that. So I played Mystic Quest, and I was just like, wow, this music is wonderful. The story they're telling has multiple characters coming in and out of my party. They have lives like normal people, and they can't just follow me the whole time. This is really cool. And then I go on and I look, and everyone's shitting on Mystic Quest. Right?
Uh,
They're like, it's a baby game. They're making fun of us. I'm like, who cares? It's fun. Did you listen to that music? Did you look at the sprites? There is not a single Super Nintendo game with better battle sprites than Mystic Quest, and you can fight me because no other game has you slowly watch them go through the 5 stages of grief the way Mystic Quest does as you're beating their ass. Like, as you're fighting them, they're slowly shriveling up. Like, one of them, what is it? The dogs have white flags on their tails that they're waving right when they're about to die. Like, it's awesome. It's just so funny and clever, and the movement on the world map is fun. And I said all this stuff, and you know what the response every time was, Brian? It's too easy, lol.
I get that. Um, and I mostly agree. I mean, unless difficulty is what you're looking for in a particular
Mm-hmm.
game, like you know, if you're like, oh, I can't wait to play the new, you know, Souls or the new like hardcore platformer Meat Boy thing, and then you get it and it's super easy. I could see that being a reason for disappointment, but in general, no, yeah, whatever. Who cares? Um, but yeah, and I was thinking about it while you were telling your story, and yeah, there are some other times I had to defend things. Monster Rancher was one of the earlier ones. Now that I think about it, because I remember there was a gap after like Monster Rancher 4 or Monster Rancher Evo for the PS2 where there was just no more Monster Rancher. And I remember I created a thread on a popular Facebook group for video games, and I was like, "Hey, man, does anybody miss Monster Rancher?" And there's like 10,000 people in this group, and I get one reply that was just like, "I mean, it wasn't a very good game series," and that was it. And that haunted me forever, sir. Um, and like I replied with a defense, and no one else ever replied, and it was just the thread. Like the game was so unpopular that people didn't even bother really continuing attacking it, and I was sad.
Isn't that always really sad when you really love something and just nobody? It's not even anger; it's just apathy. No one cares. Like, I
Yeah,
remember Breath of Fire is not like that now, but when I was younger, people are like, "What's that series?" And I'm just like, "Come on, guys, come on." He's got cool blue hair, turns into a dragon. Uh,
yeah.
so
It's
I understand it entirely. Do you have a good question for us? Any firsts?
any firsts. I mean, first arcade game that you remember playing?
Galaga.
Galaga.
Mhm.
Wow, that like was it in like a pizza place or an actual arcade?
So on the base where I would get my hair cut when I was a child in Italy, there was a little section, and I always wanted to go into it. I never could. I had to sneak away, and it was like 7 or 8 arcade machines, and I loved it. And the first one I put a quarter in was, well, lyric coin in, whatever, Galaga. I remember dying very quickly. I was smashing that button the best of my ability, the greatest of ease, just bap bap bap. I should have pulled out my arcade stick and used that as the noise. Um, but I died, and my mom laughed at me, and then she did really well because she spent hours and hours playing Galaga for some reason. She's
I mean,
very good at
uh,
Galaga.
a lot of people from that generation did. There were some arcade games that were very popular. My mom played a lot of like Space Invaders and stuff. It's kind of
Ooh.
cliche for that generation, I think.
Mhm.
No,
So
Centipede. She played a lot of Centipede.
Centipede's great. Yeah, my mom also
Well,
played a lot of Centipede.
you were gonna ask what my first was, and I will reply with it was in Brownfield, Texas, where my mother grew up. We would go every Sunday to eat pizza at a little buffet called Mr. Gaddy's.
Mm.
And they had two arcade machines. They had a Play Choice tin with uh, like Super Mario Brothers, the first. I think it was a Play Choice tin. It was a Nintendo arcade machine, so it had to be.
Mm.
And it was just Super Mario Brothers. And they also had, I think it was Arkanoid.
Arkanoid's
And
cool.
so those were my first two. And it's kind of funny. So one of my first arcade machines was just a console game. like, um, But then, there's some other games that were just ubiquitous with my childhood. I can't remember what time they showed up or when I first saw them, but Space Invaders on like a not Space Invaders, Asteroids on a vector cabinet with the little spinny wheel. I saw those a lot,
Okay.
and then as I started to get a little bit older, freaking Daytona USA, like that
Oh man.
music is burned into my brain hearing that from like eating pizza or eating Mexican food or wherever we were, like hearing that from the game room.
Daytona.
Yeah, that's the one. Like and hang on, or super hang on, maybe one of the hang
Yeah.
ons, like sitting on the only if it has the actual motorcycle. Like I hate arcade cabinets that are the simplified ones that just have like a racing wheel attached to the cabinet.
Yeah.
This is lame. Give me a seat.
I I think my favorite memory from Daytona USA is always hearing when somebody lost, because you would just hear "Game over, yeah!" and it was like the happiest game over that you would like. It was just so happy you couldn't even be upset for longer than 2 seconds. It's just like, all right, I dig it. That's awesome. I wish more arcades were around as more than just novelties now. But
Yeah.
There's no reason to. Even Japan, the land of arcades, is slowly they're dying.
I mean, we have a couple of really cool like barcades here in Houston, but yeah, they're kind of they only exist because of like our generation's nostalgia for arcades.
And that you can drink.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. They're
yeah,
just like, hey, we can make money on this concept. Um,
exactly.
so that's a pretty cool one. Here's something that'll date you a little bit, maybe. I
Okay.
just want to know what was the earliest massively multiplayer game you engaged in?
Ragnarok Online, I think.
Oh, a little RO action.
Yeah, it was either Ragnarok Online. Oh no, no, no. Okay, it was in the computer lab, and they didn't have good firewalls or anything to keep us from going anywhere. And my entire class was just playing RuneScape.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was middle school. That was I was so that would have been like 2003, 2002. Yeah, and we just had RuneScape on every computer, and the computer lab teacher didn't give a fuck. So we just spent all period playing RuneScape until that teacher got fired because they didn't care, and then somebody actually cared, and we had to do our work. But
That's sad. That's amazing. But
what
we
about you?
well, it wasn't in computer lab because all we got to play were like Zoombinis and Math
I
Blasters.
fucking love Zubinis though.
And that one that I always forget the name of, it's something Lake, Odell Lake,
I don't
where
know.
you can be a fish and you eat fish and then you get to be a bigger fish. Anyway, my first was either like because they happened right around the same time. It was either Fantasy Star Online or EverQuest.
Mm.
And then also right around the same time, I got hooked on playing some MUDs, some multi-user dimensions,
Ooh.
text-based MMOs. I played like a lot of the Iron Realms ones. A lot of I say they had like two. I played a Chea or I've never tried to say that out loud. Or Listernia.
Mm.
And yeah, those so not as I played Ragnarok Online later. It sounds like you probably actually played your first MMO before I did.
Right, I didn't put a lot of time into it, obviously, but it was fun that that happened. And then my other computer lab story. This was before I moved to the states. We had a bunch of Apple. Oh no, before I moved to Florida, I was in Nebraska. We had a bunch of Apple IIs, I think. What were the ones with like the candy colors? The like
IMAX.
iMacs. Okay, we had a bunch of iMacs, and installed on that came this game that I don't believe I forget the name of. It's you were a dinosaur that went that was preserved in the future and went back in time to save your species.
What
And,
the
and you
hell?
you had rockets on you, and you had to try and save eggs.
Okay, this like I'm sure because it's a kids game, it's probably garbage, but this sounds amazing.
um, I it came on all of the iMacs.
I don't know.
So
We had IMAX, but we didn't have that. Like I said, we had Oregon Trail and Zumbinis and Math Blasters and that game. I swear to I think it's Odell Lake. But
Nanosaur. The game was called Nanosaur. Sorry, I just remembered.
wait, Manosaur?
Nano.
Nanosaur.
ANANO.
Oh,
Nanosaur, yeah.
all right. You're gonna have to dig this up or pirate it or find it on an abandonware site or something, and you are going to have to play it on your stream now.
Okay, I will. It is really silly.
And you know what? I at some point I don't stream. Maybe I should stream, but I want to create some content around Zumbinis because I have such good memories of that game. And no one, I mean, there are YouTube videos about it, but it's not like anybody talks about it. I want to talk about
I
Zumbini.
streamed it actually. I've streamed Zumbinis. Yeah.
Why? Where was I, man? Where was I?
I think this was pre Blood God server.
There's no pre Brian. Okay,
but
I at the beginning of the universe there was Brian, and then I spoke y'all into existence.
it was BBC before Brian Kell.
Ugh.
um yeah, no, it's And I just looked it up. There's an open source version of the game, given blessing by the original creator, using OpenGL.
That's so you are going to play this on stream. I love how we've derailed the entire podcast, and now it's no
Don't
longer
bring it up. Just keep it cool. Keep it cool.
no longer about gaming first. This is now about like computer lab.
Listen, computer lab was an important part of our lives.
It was like the social experience of computer lab was pretty awesome because you would go in there. There was another game we played on earlier computers that was like some sort of Moonlander thing. I just remembered, but
Mhm.
you would all go in there, and a lot of times you play the same thing, right? So you'd have like 20 kids playing Oregon Trail, and
Yes.
then when you left, you'd all talk about your experience playing
Mhm.
Oregon Trail, and it was fun social interaction. That now the equivalent is to everybody plays a new game when it comes out, and you talk about it on a message board or whatever, or a Discord. But back then, that was the equivalent. It was like you get back to class and you're like, oh man, like I drowned in the river. How did it go for you? Did you make it to Oregon? No, no, man, no. I was killed by quote savages quote.
Yeah. Yes. That's part of what made the experience great. And honestly, I talk about this experience streaming a lot, but my one of my fondest memories of doing it is when I played La Mulana, and it felt like that. It felt like I was talking to my friends because what would happen is I would be like, I found this, this, and this. What the fuck do I do? And they'd be like, well, if you tried going over here and doing this, or how about this? Did you write it down? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just on a playground again. Like having that social experience. And that's part of what's really cool about video games, in my opinion, is that despite being personal, unless you're playing an MMO or something, of course, it can still be a very interesting social experience. And speaking of which, Brian, what was the first game that you ever remember having that experience with? Where like you talked about it with people and it developed kind of its own unique story in your head because of it.
I was starting to think about that. Like the playground game. Like we did that a lot with like stuff in the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis era, but I'm having a hard time remembering like specific examples that weren't more than just being like. I mean, we'd exchange codes. I remember that. Like,
Mhm.
I learned the Konami code from some kid at school.
Hell yeah.
Uh, and some level secrets and stuff like that. Like, Mario 3 was a good example. Like people telling you how to skip worlds, where to go for warp pipes, crap like that. Actually, the earliest example of that kind of an exchange was probably for the first Mario Brothers. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Okay.
talking like multiple people in my class exchanged the hey, you can just jump up, on level 1 2, you can go above the level and run to the end and get to the pipes. And it started from there. Something bigger though, more of a broad experience like you were talking about, probably didn't come along until you know like N64 PlayStation era for me. Things like
Mm.
we were all playing GoldenEye or Perfect Dark around the same time
Nice.
and exchanging secrets on that. Like, dude, like I went on the first or the second level, the airfield. I went and got the tank, and I was running over people. And then you're like, wait, there's a tank, and it's like, yeah, the tank on the left, you can get in it. What, or telling people here's how to get big head mode or stuff like that,
Oh man, big head mode. Ugh,
or
the classics.
just all sorts of secrets like that, or exchanging secrets about like Ocarina of Time and crap. Um, it
You
was
know,
I so my experiences, we've talked about this on the Discord, me, you, and a couple other people. I suffer from social anxiety. It's not nearly as bad as it was when I was a kid. Like I can deal with it now. When I was a kid, though, I struggled with it really hard. So a lot of my way of dealing with it was to self isolate. So a lot of times I missed out on those kind of cool social exchanges in school.
yeah, no, I can get that. For me, it wasn't a lot of people. So I was always into RPGs, and this was before Seven happened. So it wasn't cool to be into RPGs.
Oh, I remember those days.
I got made fun of for liking the weird Japanese games. Uh,
It's like
but
we have a mutual friend who talks about having like an anime circle in the school, and I'm like, what was that like? I would have gotten beat up if I talked about that in my school. Like,
yeah, in high school we had an anime club, and the only reason I didn't get beat up is I'm a very large person. Uh, I hit like 6'1" in high school, so I got lucky because they would square up, and I would look down at them, and then they would walk away.
you got that
But
intimidation factor.
which is great because I can't fight worth a shit. But I didn't need to. Um, but the thing is, for me, it was Super Mario RPG. I found a couple friends. This was like my third move. I don't. I also moved around a lot, so it was hard to like get a good set of friends. And one of my friends learned how to do the battle theme on recorder because we were just so into Super Mario RPG, and we would be like, "Oh, I did this. Did you do this?" Like, "Oh, you got that score. What, you could do that at Yoshi's Island?" Like, it was this cool thing where we were finding all of these secrets. Like, I found all the secrets in Booster Tower because I loved Booster. He was my little goblin buddy. I'm like, I feel bad for the poor guy. He just wants a girlfriend.
That is amazing.
And at the end, I'm like, he just wanted the cake. He didn't even want the girlfriend. I feel you, Booster. I get you. Right? And so I went around the tower. There was a whole bunch of secrets in the tower. And since I revisited, I found out that you could get to the casino and find all these cool items. And then my one friend found the lazy shell and told me how to find that. So it was just this cool experience of trading secrets in Mario RPG. And the fact that he just took the time to learn the battle theme on recorder, and then we would just sit in the bus and he would just play it while we were talking about it. It was it was a cool little experience that I had, and I treasure that.
That is amazing. And actually, that's a pretty high note. And since this is a mini episode, I think we'll probably quit on that note.
Sounds
Um,
good. He mostly didn't do high notes though, because there aren't a lot in that song.
maybe I'll put that song as the exit music. Um, but yeah, that was a few of our video game firsts, and also a lot about computer
Computer
lab.
lab.
Computer lab, which like we should have a computer lab episode because I got some. I like to talk about that because you know you're a little younger than me, but you're not that much younger, and I think our generation has the interesting experience of starting on very primitive computers and
Yes.
leaving on like Windows 95 or Windows 98 stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and just going from like Daisy Wheel printers and stuff to more modern stuff. Like we were in school for all of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So some interesting stories.
For sure, we could definitely do that. But since we're going ahead and moseying on out of here, where can they find you, Brian?
On Twitter under the Brian C Nerd, and pretty much everywhere else under Brian C Nerd. Or you can find me at our podcast accounts, which are now I went and corrected them all. They're Misplaced Pod or the Misplaced Podcast, and you can find them on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube.
Excellent.
What about you?
Now, for me, you can find me at Teeps the Great on Twitter, and you can also find me on Teeps the Great at Twitch. I just finished Mass Effect 1, and I am now moving on to Mass Effect 2. My Shepard, in the process of becoming born once more, no longer has eyebrows and looks like a Sailor Moon villain, and it's perfect.
It is terrible, but I recommend your Twitch. It's a lot of fun, and you know after that you're going to be playing Nanosaur. So
Yeah, Nanosaur's gonna happen. Maybe in between Breath of Fire 4. Maybe that might be the break game that I play.
don't make me, uh, you know, Twitch you money or however I can pay you to
Twitch
play.
you bunny.
I don't know how any of that works.
Is that like using the YouTubes?
Don't make me YouTube you some money to do the game that I want.
Oh, wonderful. We really need to end on that. That's perfect. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Later.